Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fiction Radio today. Our story is called There is a Reason That Large Sums of Money Are Locked Up in Vaults. I come from a long line of bankers. Every male member of my family for many generations have worked in a bank and have all ended up becoming the bank manager. I was the black sheep of our family and had intended to become a doctor as I thought it was a more noble cause. When I explained this to my parents, they began to scream at me and tell me that I was a terrible human being. I stood there quietly and listened to their abuse. You honestly would have thought I had told them that I intended to rip my clothes off and run through the streets naked by the way they reacted. My extended family organized an intervention, and I was eventually forced to study finance so that I could carry on our family's legacy. I finished top of my class in my college class as I had the capabilities to do whatever I wanted. My father pulled a few strings and got me a job at a bank close to where I lived. I hated the job within a few days of working there as everyone else was older than me by 20 years. They would ignore me the whole time, so I was forced to spend my lunch break by myself. The bank had this huge vault in the basement that was full of money and lockboxes. There was a rule that the money had to be brought down at the end of the day, and because I was the youngest, then I would always get stuck doing this. I always hated going down there, as it would always give me the creeps. One Thursday, I was given the money to put away and told to lock up afterwards by the manager. He was meant to stay with me during this time, but he was going to see his mistress. I put my earphones in and was singing some Slipknot songs as I was heading down. There was a lot more money in the vault than usual, as tomorrow was payday for a big company who liked to pay by cash. I stupidly sat down on the piles of money and began watching a video that one of my friends had sent on. I was lost in a world of my own when I heard a deafening thud behind me. I jumped up and realized the vault door had closed over. I had completely forgot that it automatically closes at 6 p.m. There was no way of opening it from the inside, and there was no signal on my phone due to how thick the walls were. I didn't panic, as I knew someone would be in the bank by 8 a.m. in the morning, and I could survive until then. It was probably every person's dream to fall asleep on a large pile of money, and tonight I would be doing that. After a few minutes, I started hearing whispers coming from somewhere in the vault. I looked around the whole room but couldn't find anything. I dismissed it as just my overactive imagination. The whispers began to get more frequent and louder, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. They all seemed to be arguing about something. The room was getting colder as well, and I began to see my own breath. This made no sense, as the vault is temperature controlled to avoid damaging the money. I used a pile of money to cover myself and keep my body warm. I was on the brink of falling asleep when these unholy screams emanated from everywhere. They were screams of anguish and pain. My ears began to bleed as the screams felt like they were ripping into my very skull. The screaming finally stopped after almost 20 minutes. I spoke out loud as I feared that I might have gone deaf, but was relieved to hear my own voice. I went to lie back on the money and let out a yelp of pain after getting a paper cut off of one of the notes. I began to suck my finger as a way to stop the bleeding. I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye and then felt a stinging sensation across my eyeball. I let out a scream of pain and closed the sore eye, and then gazed down to see a banknote lying on the ground with a small trickle of blood on it. The next few moments were chaotic, as suddenly all of the banknotes began moving around the room. My entire body felt like it was on fire as the banknotes began cutting through my clothes and into my exposed flesh. I had my eyelids tightly closed, and the banknotes were determined to rip through my eyelids to get at my eyes. I covered my face with my hands to try and protect them, and instantly regretted it, as paper cuts were now being concentrated between my fingers. I have no idea how long this onslaught continued, as my next vivid memory is waking up to discover the bank manager standing there with a shocked expression while another coworker vomited when she saw me. The doctors who treated me were deathly silent, and I found out later they had never seen anything like it. My entire body was covered with tens of thousands of small cuts. No one would ever believe me about what happened, and I have refused to this day to ever use cash ever again. I know that every banknote in that vault was checked, and all of them had traces of blood. Money has caused a lot of death and misery over the centuries, and maybe it has absorbed some of this. Be careful with your money, as it may try and kill you.